What's going on, guys? I'm Corey.
I'm Shane.
And welcome to another episode of the Slasher Center podcast.
And today on the podcast, we are going to be ranking our Scream movies.
Mm-hmm.
And just to start off, we will not be including the TV series from MTV and the latest
VH1
Scream series. Even though they were, in my opinion, they were alright.
Mm-hmm.
I like the VH1 series better. And I thought even though it was like short, it was still good.
Mm-hmm.
But MTV was alright too. I just didn't like how it ended. But
yeah, we'll definitely do a separate video.
We'll just talk about that.
Us talking about it and analyzing and stuff like that. And we'll do a ranking of where the 3 seasons lie.
Yeah. But for Scream, just the movies in general, all directed by Wes Craven.
Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace to him. Now, this was kind of a hard list, I would say, for number 1 and number 2.
Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing about all the Scream movies. There's not a singular bad movie. You can't argue that there's a bad movie.
Exactly.
Because they're all good.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you may be able to argue is just like the setting of it and the motive of where the director was going towards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I personally like all the Scream movies. And I know Corey could agree on that.
Definitely.
That's kind of like the franchise that like got us started.
Consistently good sequels.
Yeah, it's kind of the franchise that got us started with, us liking horror.
Believe it or not, Scream was actually the first horror movie I've ever watched.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's just a great series in general. I wish there was a Scream 5, but we only can deal with 4 films right now.
Hey, you never know. If Kevin Williamson writes up a good script and we find a new director, it could happen.
Exactly. But let's get into the list. I think we both can agree on the last or the worst movie out of all of them. It's Scream 3.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Scream 3 it's still a good movie.
Yeah, it's a solid film.
It's a solid movie. I just feel like it bases too much off the original with, all the Hollywood stuff and, them trying to recreate a movie.
Yeah, the
style.
Woodsboro murders.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just too much. I think like all the scenes from the movie just kind of related more to the original, and we already saw that.
Right. What'd you think about the opening scene with Cotton Weary? I thought it was handled great.
I thought that was great. I liked how at the end of the Scream 2, he came out pretty much as the hero.
Right.
You could say.
And when I first watched Scream 2, I didn't expect him to return.
Really?
Because I thought it was like the perfect ending for him for Scream 2, and then when I saw him Scream 3, I'm like, oh, shit's gonna go down now.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the opening to the movie is definitely the best part about it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you have Sydney in this movie seeing visions of her mother. Right. And then finding out at the end that, the director, or I forgot his name.
Yeah, Roman.
Yeah,
the
Bridger,
half-brother.
Yeah, Roman Bridger, the director of the Stab movies. He came out as the killer and was Sydney's half-brother.
Right. And what I loved about this movie was the voice changer. Like, I loved how it could imitate other voices, and it made it difficult to, like, actually distinguish, like, who's behind the phone call. And I thought it was a cool aspect to
speaking of the voice changer, I liked how they implemented the voice changer where you could switch him to, like, different voices, like the Dewey's voice to Gail's voice to Sydney's voice, so like you never know who's calling.
I love the eerie, creepy atmosphere, and when Ghostface walked into Cotton's house and stalked Christine when she was taking a shower, I thought that was like really creepy. And while he was stalking her, he was still threatening to kill Cotton, which was awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, again, we could talk about this movie for a while, but I just feel like it's the worst out of all 4.
Yeah, it's definitely the weakest, I'd say. I wouldn't say the worst, but the weakest.
But yeah, it's not horrible. But I think if they had Randy in this movie, if they didn't cut him off from Scream 2, it would definitely been a lot better because you have that, know-it-all by your side to help you through the murders. But it was still an okay or a great movie in general.
And I love how Roman didn't get help from a second killer. Like, he did it all by himself.
Yeah.
And, he wanted to take the realistic approach of, instead of it's just a movie, he was the only one who reached the end and almost got Sydney killed, like, all by himself.
Yeah, especially, when he lured all of them into his house and, he had, like, a mannequin of himself dead in a casket and in the basement.
Right.
So everybody.
So it alluded the fact that he was dead already, and in another scene where they did that was the phone call with Sarah in the studio. They alluded to the fact that he was killed off by Ghostface, and it hinted that Roman was more than a suspect. And it wasn't easy to spot, and I thought that was fine writing.
Mm-hmm. But no, I think Roman did a good job as a killer.
I did too.
In this movie.
Also, the fight scene between Sidney and Roman was brutal.
Yeah, I like the scene where he's like missing something, found something, he shot her, but then little did he know she had the
honestly, I thought people argue that Roman was the worst Ghostface. I totally disagree because I thought he had a better motive. Because let's think about it, he was a half brother.
Charlie was the worst Ghostface because
it seemed like
Jill was doing all the work and Charlie was just there being a
he was just
I
there.
guess you could say.
But here's the thing about Roman's motive: he was a forgotten half brother who was dumped. He felt jealous. Mm-hmm. He was miserable and he wanted justice. And he was crazy psychologically. And he was the smartest of the killers. And the mind games he played with Sidney. Remember when he pretended to be her mother when he put that blank whatever
it was like the rag over.
The rag over, yeah, that was awesome. And he was a killer that was smart enough not to have a partner to backstab him.
No, yeah, definitely. I think Roman has one of the strongest motives in this series.
Mm-hmm. I thought Dewey and Gale's relationship was humorous to witness on screen. The way they bantered back and forth towards one another.
And then the proposal at the end.
Now, let's talk about something interesting about Scream 3.
Yeah, I liked what we talked about this before we pressed record. Mm-hmm. I really liked this, so go ahead and explain.
Apparently, this film was supposed to be a lot more darker, but this came out, I think, before Columbine, I believe. They had a much darker story plan, but Columbine just happened, so the teen-centered outline that was written by Kevin Williamson was completely scrapped. Rewrites were constant, and also the script leaked online.
Really?
So people already saw it, so I had to change it last minute.
Wow.
But honestly, I'm fine with the version that we got. Yeah.
2001.
So, do you want to hear the original intent with Scream 3? We could just briefly talk about it.
Yeah, just briefly talk about it.
Okay. So, in the original story for Scream 3, this is in that quote by Kevin Williamson, the killers were basically a fan club of Woodsboro kids that had formed because of Stab 1 and 2, and they were doing all the killings, and the big surprise for the movie, when Sidney walked into the house after Ghostface had killed everyone, and they all rose up, none of them were actually dead, and they planned the whole thing, so it was just a huge prank.
Wow. Wow.
Huge prank. And Stu was also intended to survive in the early drafts of Scream 3. And he was the one that sent the Stab fans after Sidney, which is really weird. I find that so weird.
I know, because remember they had a behind the scenes and Stu was like in Scream 2 behind the scenes.
Like, who walk in the back of the party scene? Which is hilarious, because now I was walking down the street last week and the guy from TMZ was like, hey, you're in Scream 2. I'm like, I'm in Scream 1. He's like, no, you're in the party scene. I'm like, you need a hobby.
Wearing a wig, right. I remember that.
So I guess Stu's intent was to freak Sidney out.
Yeah.
That's my guess. It's an interesting concept, but honestly, I'm fine with the version that we got.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so, I mean, that's Scream 3. Still a great movie, but on to our number 3. We both have this. It's Scream 4 from 2011, the most recent Scream movie. I really love this movie.
I do too.
I remember, seeing this in theaters when I was 11 with my mom, actually. And, I got creeped out. I thought Jill was a great killer for the movie, just because she was so identical to Sidney, and it pretty much seemed like the whole movie she was becoming the new Sidney.
This movie was essentially the remake of the original.
Exactly.
They were trying to copycat everything that occurred in the original movie.
Yeah. I like Jill's motive. She wasn't popular, and she had to, sit behind Sidney and like be in her shadow her whole life, because she was always on the news with this murder stuff. So I think that Robbie and Charlie were
good chemistry.
They were the Noahs of this movie.
Yeah,
they knew,
or the Randys.
Yeah, or the Randys. Oh, I said no because of MTV Scream.
Yeah.
But I understand that. But no, yeah, they both had a good. They both were good at their job, which was to be a Randy.
Yeah. And this movie was just the beginning of the social media age because like iPhones were just starting to get popular right now. I think this movie, it still holds up extremely well, and I love the character development of Sidney, Dewey, and Gale. At this point, all of them aren't even fazed by Ghostface anymore, which I love because it perfectly, fits with how their characters progressed in the previous films, especially Sidney.
They're all mature in this film.
Right. And in the first movie, she's always using her speed to throw Ghostface off, but in this one, she's tackling him, kicking him in the face,
exactly,
dodging his knife like a badass.
Wes Craven pretty much made Sidney a new person.
Mm-hmm. Good character development.
Yeah, very good character development. I really like the kill with Olivia.
Yes.
That was really brutal.
That's probably the most brutal kill in the series.
Guts blowing everywhere, and I really like the kills in this movie. I think it's the most gore out of any other movie.
One thing I could say that I kind of wish was introduced, I just wish they explained what happened to Sidney's father because he wasn't brought up in this film. But in the deleted scenes, it stated that he died, but they didn't explain what caused it.
They never gave an explanation.
Right. I think just one quick scene of just explaining that would have been good, but it doesn't ultimately affect the course of the film. I thought it was still a great film.
I also thought the hospital scene at the end, when everybody thought it was over, and obviously Wes Craven came out again with another little curveball.
Right.
And I thought, again, the hospital scene was great.
Like, easily the final act is the best since the first and second film. Jill, played by Emma Roberts, was awesome in this movie. Her motive was very unique, and I noticed that, since she's such a small person, she comes across as a huge threat to anyone that gets in her way. And let's talk about the gore in this movie. I thought the gores, everything about this movie was extremely graphic. Ghostface is probably the most vicious in this film than any of the other movies, in my opinion. Again, like you said, the death of who was it?
The death of
Olivia, right? Another character that was great was Kirby, played by Hayden Panettiere.
Oh yeah, Kirby was. I forgot to mention her. She was.
Yeah, so her character basically represents any diehard horror movie fanatic, and she's not like the casual horror movie fan. Like, she is the diehard fan that could answer like any trivia question in seconds.
Yeah. And it's funny because this movie seems like, just like how you brought up there with everybody, or Kirby being a horror fanatic, it seems like everybody is in this film because obviously you have Charlie and Robbie, they're running.
Jill's somewhat of a horror fanatic.
Yeah, well, she was the killer, so she had to be a horror fan. But obviously you had Charlie and Robbie running the cinema club at the school. You had Jill, who, loved Texas Chainsaw when Charlie asked her that question.
Yeah,
that was pretty funny. And then obviously Jill was the killer, so she had to be a horror.
Also, I love the fact that this movie took risks, and what I mean risks is that when Jill murdered her mother, to be the only final girl left, so she could get some fame, she basically said, "Screw work, screw sanity, screw going through the typical motions of life, where you go through college, get your degree, get married, have kids." She wanted to be the one who's everyone talking about for years.
She wanted to be famous.
Right.
So. But, so that's Scream 4. Again, another great movie. But I'm gonna say something right now. I tricked Corey before we started recording. He thought I had Scream 2 at number 1.
I really did.
I did not. But, okay, I have Scream 2 at number 2. I want to just say this. In the movie, Mickey did say you cannot do an original. I don't buy that because Randy said you can't. So, but again, this is just another great movie. I like the beginning, the opening up with this theater scene and the stab movie going on. I really liked what I really liked was how they pretty much copycatted Woodsboro.
Right.
You know, remember with the killings, they had like Maureen Evans and Maureen Prescott, just pretty much identical people or identical names.
Before we actually dive into like the premise of the movie, let's talk about the production of this film real quick. So Scream hit theaters in 1996 and it exploded into a cultural phenomenon.
And then this came out.
And then a sequel was ordered. They only had 357 days to do this. That's not a lot of time. And they fucking nailed it.
They did.
They nailed everything.
Nailed
it's like, I think Wes and the writer, they had everything planned out. So that's why it's so good.
Yeah, I definitely say this is in the top 3 of my sequels.
Again, like you said, the movie theater scene was so entertaining to witness, and whenever I watch it, it makes me wish how big horror movie releases had this much anticipation and excitement. And just the thought of someone getting brutally butchered in front of a live crowd is kind of horrifying to think about, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, to continue with that, I liked, I really didn't, the one thing I didn't like about this movie was obviously Randy getting killed off. I thought, you know, you always need somebody that knows everything about a horror movie, pretty much. You know, who has that or how can I say this? That has that, you know, ego and has that motive, I guess you could say as well. But killing off Randy, I thought wasn't really good for this movie, because you know he was in the original. He survived the original,
right? And
you know, you look at it, Sidney survived the original, Dewey survived the original, Gale survived the original, and Randy survived the original. So I thought they would carry on.
You know what's really interesting though? You know how they claimed like if you don't have sex, you'll survive a horror movie. They brought up in this movie that he did with the video store girl.
If you're watching this tape, it means, as I feared, I did not survive these killings here at Windsor College. And that giving up my virginity to Karen Kolchak at the video store was probably not a good idea.
Karen Kolchak?
Yes, Karen Kolchak.
Creepy Karen?
Shut up! She's a sweet person, okay? We were working late, we were putting away some videos in the porno section.
That's why he died, apparently.
Okay, so at least it...
They followed the rules.
Because he broke the rules. Because he broke the rules.
Okay, so here's why I love Scream 2. Because it makes you care about the characters. Like, the moment when Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy, of course, gets killed, it shook me up because I couldn't believe he got wiped out. It was an audacious move to kill off a likable character in such an inglorious manner. But it showed that knowing about horror movies doesn't always mean you'll survive a horror movie.
Exactly. Pretty much saying nobody's safe, even if it is the main character. You can never be safe. But let's get into the killers of this movie. This was very interesting because it kind of, brought in 2 people that you never would ever think about seeing together, being Billy Loomis's mom and Mickey.
Now, the reveal with Billy's mother being the killer was such an awesome idea. I mean, the motive was simple, but it was executed so well. Mickey's motive was alright for the most part. He wanted to blame the movies for his actions and wanted to recreate the Woodsboro murders and be the copycat killer. And he was basically a deranged theater student that was willing to get away with murder, get thrown in jail, and blame cinema violence for the course of his actions. But Mrs. Loomis, on the other hand, she just wanted revenge.
Yeah, her motive was definitely a lot more enticing than
a lot more basic.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's very basic. Yeah, Billy's mom after the first movie.
I'm just saying compared to like the other ghost faces we had.
Oh yeah, a basic move. But, so I think Billy's mom did a great job. I liked how they said that she lost so much weight and got to her shape, and like you never would even think it was her.
Yeah, plastic surgery.
Yeah, I liked her fake obsession with Gale, I guess you could say.
Let's talk about a couple scenes that I thought really stood out to me. When Dewey gets stabbed in the sound booth. It was a sad scene, and when I first saw it, I thought he was dead. I didn't think he was coming back. Courtney Cox really elevated the scene with their acting ability towards David Arquette. Gale progresses a lot in this movie. In the beginning, she's kind of like not taking this really seriously, but at the end, she's determined to take down Ghostface and just end all of this.
Yeah, in the beginning, she was more of like she was a reporter. She focused on her reportings, and she didn't care about anything else besides that.
What do you think about the... sorry, I don't mean to change
it's
stuff.
Okay, but when Dewey arrives, like, it's a lot different for her.
Right. What did you think about the police car chase scene? When Ghostface was on top of the hood?
I thought that was one of the more
I thought that was the best scene
interesting.
in the movie.
That was definitely one of the more interesting.
Get out of my car, fucker.
Yeah, that's a great line. And you know, just the way Sydney handled the situation, even though her friend died. When Hallie got killed, it was kind of like a sacrifice, I guess.
Right.
I guess you could say.
Again, and right after the car crash, I love the build-up and suspense when Sydney decided to go back and remove his mask, and when they had to climb over Ghostface.
Yeah, that's
Remember that
yeah.
scene? Mm-hmm.
But yeah, right now,
Derek's death scene too, but
yeah,
we won't talk too much about it.
exactly. But by now, you guys probably know what number one is. It's Scream.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, we had the exact same list.
I know, that's crazy.
That's very
Interesting.
Very interesting. But again, like I always say with these movies, you can't outdo an original.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was the stepping stone of where this franchise was going towards.
Right.
I think, you know, just Billy and Stu having their motives was great. At the end with the party was great. It was just a bloodbath at the end.
Right. And also, horror was dying during this time.
Yeah.
During this time, there was a lot of crappy sequels that are coming out, like the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. They weren't doing very well. Same with Friday the 13th. But this movie revitalized the horror genre and brought it back to its roots.
Yeah, so that's why you gotta have it number one.
Mm-hmm. Also, Scream, in my opinion, had the best and most intense opening scenes to any horror movie other than Halloween.
Yeah.
Probably the second best.
I could definitely watch that opening scene over and over again. It's just so original.
And I have to ask you, what did you think about the 180 that they pulled on everybody? Because they showcased Drew Barrymore as the main protagonist. That's why she's on the poster.
Mm-hmm.
And when you first saw Scream, did you think she was going to be the star of the movie?
Yeah.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
I did too.
Yeah.
I was not expecting her to die 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what else? I think that Sydney did a great job. You know, she was a teenager in this scene. She's still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Randy played a big part, obviously, because, like I said before,
Yeah. He had a minor role, but for some reason it felt like a big role.
No,
to
it
all
definitely
of us.
felt like a bigger role because I remember when they were all watching Halloween, he was explaining the rules to them, and
Mm-hmm.
and like that's when you know that he's a real horror guy.
Mm-hmm. I also love how this movie references other classic horror movies, and I think this is the first time a movie like this has done something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And did you know originally Drew Barrymore was supposed to play Sydney?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But she wanted to play the opening girl that gets butchered in the very beginning. To make it like, you know. I think that was a great decision.
I think it's a big pay cut.
Huh?
It's definitely a big pay cut.
It is. It's crazy.
Why would you want to be a star of the show?
I
But
don't know. I guess she wanted to make it memorable.
Yeah.
And it was.
But yeah, she did a great job. Well, I mean, I think you just can't outdo the original.
You can't.
And this is definitely the best Scream movie.
And now,
I just want to talk about the
go ahead.
ending where, you know, Billy and Stu reveal that they're the killer. I really like the scene where, you know, they're playing with the voice changer. They're like, look what happens, and you look like you've seen a ghost.
Uh-huh.
And I like their whole setup plan. Like, you know, have the dad go crazy, blame him for the killings, them to survive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a good motive their motive was from the movies, again, like you said with Mickey, because he just wanted to copycat Billy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we really saw Sydney show her other side, like she does in Scream 4 in the movie when she killed off Billy.
Right. And again, like you talked about earlier, the cast is so great. Everyone's so entertaining and captivating to see on screen. David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Neve Campbell, Jamie Kennedy, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, etc. You're not going to get a cast as good as this. Like, it was literally perfect. And one of my favorite death scenes was Tatum's death scene in the garage.
Yeah, the garage.
And the party sequence that goes on, Principal Hembree's death, the final act were all my absolute favorites.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk about Principal Hembree's scene. It's kind of funny that, you know, when Ghostface is kind of messing around with him, and then you see Wes Craven in a Freddy Krueger outfit mopping the floor.
Yeah, he did a cameo.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And then at the party when they're like, yeah, Percival Hembry's guts are hanging from the football flag.
Yeah, I love how they
football
connect
field goal.
everything so well in
Yeah,
this
no,
movie. It
it's-
feels all connected.
No, yeah, it's definitely all connected. That's why I think it's the best Scream movie out there.
I do too.
But yeah, that's gonna conclude our
ranking.
episode today. You know, it's a shorter one, but obviously this is a short series, so
Right.
I mean, we really didn't want to talk about the TV series because it wasn't directed by Wes Craven and it wasn't, you know, in the same timeline
Yeah.
and it wasn't really, you know, the same. But thank you all for watching
Please like, comment, subscribe.
and we'll see you guys in the next one.